Hello there, Lunar Squadron, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have another very exciting news update for Star Wars Outlaws, as the information for this game just keeps on coming. We have a bunch of new interviews, a bunch of new gameplay that's released over the past few weeks. There's a ton of stuff to talk about, but today we are talking about a new interview with Julian Garrity, where he revealed a ton of very exciting information, from stuff about the reputation system to the length of the game, all kinds of stuff, and we're going to break it all down for you today. But first, if you're new to the channel, we would love to have you as always, and the way to do that, just go down below this video, hit that little subscribe button, the bell notification right on next to it. It'll notify you every single time that Andreas and I upload. However, if you would like to take this conversation beyond the comment section on YouTube, make sure to go over to Twitter and follow us at Lunar Squadron and join our Discord server. Links to all of that will be down below. Now with that out of the way, Andreas, you ready to jump into a new interview with Julian Garrity?
Oh yeah, let's do this, guys. Today's article is hot off the press, released June 20th, 2024, out of VGC. It is titled Star Wars Outlaws Interview. Uncharted is a wonderful game to be compared to. Nick, this article does a good job of summarizing a few new points that I think were lost in the shuffle earlier on last week, as we got just the deluge of content for this game. And beyond that, we also got some new details and some vague details in the gray area that I think warrant some juicy speculation. So why don't we just get into it?
Yeah, definitely, guys. This is a phenomenal interview with Julian Garrity. We're not going to cover the whole thing because it's pretty lengthy, but if you have the time, highly recommend going to check this out and reading through the whole thing, because it's a great interview with Julian. But we want to focus in on a couple points that were presented in this interview. First, this question where they ask, how do you balance scale and detail in an open world of this size? And Julian says, I think it comes down to team size and ambition. Very early, we said this would be a 25 to 30 hour Golden Path adventure, 50 to 60 hours for completionists, and from a guy with a family and job and a fair amount of time, but it's not Assassin's Creed's 200 hour epic. That allows us to really focus on the detail and focus on executing something that is manageable. Andreas, we've kind of known now for a few days what the length of this game was going to be, but we haven't yet gotten the opportunity to talk about it until now. And to be honest with you, I think this is kind of a game-changing component of this game, because going into this, I was kind of expecting the main story for Star Wars Outlaws to come in roughly that 12 to 15 hour range, say like a Spider-Man 2 or something like that, or even the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games, which were roughly 15-ish to 20 hours. But this game being 25 to 30 for the main story, and then an additional 25 hours for all of the side content, this is a really big game.
Yeah, it is. And I think for us Star Wars fans, I think we're immediately going to compare this time to beat with our last AAA Star Wars title, being Star Wars Jedi Survivor. That game had a main story length, and I'm using the howlongtobeat.com numbers here, which I know a lot of people go off of for this kind of information. And the main story completion time for Jedi Survivor was 20 hours. So Nick, that is 5 to 10 hours longer on just the main story. And then main plus sides on Jedi Survivor was 33 and a half. Julian Garrity says that this game's time to complete is going to clock in at around 50 to 60 hours for the completionist. So that is, again, higher than what we came to expect out of Jedi Survivor. And I think that's a great thing. And one thing that I am liking about this is particularly the concentration on detail here, because I think there may be an assumption that the longer the game, the more compromises you're making on making every bit of those 30 hours or here to completion 60 hours interesting content and detailed content. And it looks like, at the very least, Julian Garrity's frame of reference here is comparing his title to Assassin's Creed titles, which are like 200 hours. They could take a lifetime to complete, all the way to completion. If you just look at Valhalla, like how long that game was, just ridiculously long. And it sounds like this is a great compromise for this AAA title where you're going to get a long story that really you're going to get your money's worth out of it, but also it's going to be well detailed, well polished, and so far from what we've seen, the story portions that we've gotten our eyes on thus far do look like they have that level of polish that you want out of a AAA story experience.
Yeah, I'm just really excited about this. That is so much Star Wars. 25 to 30 hours of story. I just was not expecting it. And given what we know about the story, or at least what we've been told, that it's going to be about this main heist to give Kay her freedom to get away from the Zarek Besh, do we think that this entire story is going to be around that heist, or do you think it's kind of a smokescreen? Because part of me has a hard time coming to terms that we're going to spend the whole 25 to 30 hours focused on just this heist. I'm just saying, what if that's just half the game? And at the halfway point, this game goes totally off the rails and it's just something we weren't expecting. I don't know. 30 hours is a really long time for a story. I don't think people are realizing it. Of course, it's not as big as Red Dead Redemption or some of those bigger Assassin's Creed titles, but that's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you have to figure, 30 hours worth of story. If really the premise behind this game is just that you're preparing for one heist for 30 hours, that either is the coolest heist that you'll ever pull. Think of the payoff on a 30-hour setup. This is if you guys have played GTA Online, imagine spending 30 hours on a setup mission for a heist, or 20 hours for a setup mission on a heist. That would be a lot of setting up for one heist. So Nick, I think there's something to that here, that there's gotta be another twist to the tale. If I could maybe write my own wish list on what I want to see out of this game, Nick, you know what I want. I want full-blown syndicate wars in this game. I think it starts with a heist, but it finishes with a big old syndicate war where you have all of these syndicates at each other's throats. You have Lady Kira versus Jabba the Hutt. It's like SmackDown versus Raw, but syndicate version. That's what I want out of this game.
Yeah, definitely. I think now, given what we've been told about the length, if it's true, a lot of potential here when it comes to the story and the twists and turns it could take. But let's move on. Now, the context of this next question is VGC asking Julian Garrity if he would like to continue working on licensed titles since other creative teams have moved on from it. And this question asks, Massive has now worked on Avatar and Star Wars, while other publishers continue to somewhat move away from them. Is it your wish as a creative to continue to do so? And he says, there are so many stories in Star Wars Outlaws that we'd like to tell and characters to come across. The timeline is perfect. There's a lot of potential there. It's a very interesting answer to this question, Andreas, because I think one of the things that you and I have been talking about a lot recently, we speculated in videos, we've talked about it in private, is Star Wars Outlaws a one-off? Does it have franchise potential like the Jedi games? And this answer from Julian provides a lot of interesting insight as to maybe his wishes for it, or perhaps that this game does set itself up to have that franchise potential, but will that happen?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that this article ends on this note. This is the mic drop of this article. And so it does leave me kind of scratching my head here thinking, did Julian Garrity just tip us all off that he sees this franchise potential in Star Wars Outlaws? And of course, we know there's going to be a season pass for this game, and so there is an opportunity there to tell additional stories with Kay. But man, I do think that there is something to a franchise potential, particularly if this game hits, Nick. I think if this game is a big hit, it would almost be a missed opportunity not to strike again while the iron is hot. We all saw that happen with Jedi Fallen Order, that the reception of that game was great. It sold a lot of copies, and it would almost be nonsensical of Respawn not to go on and make a couple more of those. And here, you would imagine if Ubisoft and Star Wars really hit a home run with this game, it would almost make little to no sense not to try to run it back and sell more copies.
Yeah, from kind of reading between the lines of this interview, it does feel like a lot of that kind of stuff is going to hinge on, obviously, the performance of this game. That's stating the obvious, but, he does kind of talk about how this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work on Star Wars, a dream come true, but then he also talks about, hey, there's so much potential here in this timeline and with these characters, so he kind of walks that line, and I hope this game performs incredibly well to spur a sequel, because just seeing what they are packing into this game, I would be so excited to see how they would build on that and grow into a second game like Jedi Survivor did from Fallen Order. I would love to see what they can do with that open world potential 5 years from now in a sequel to this game. That would be incredible. That could be so exciting. They could build in an online component, possibly. Like, the possibilities are endless for a potential sequel down the road if that is a road we get to take. But that, of course, is yet to be seen. Now, the last component of this article, Andreas, that I want to hone in on is perhaps the most exciting part of this interview. And it comes from this question about the reputation system, where they asked, the demo features a reputation system. How does that work in relation to the main story? And Julian says, it doesn't impact the main story. There are choices in the main missions, but the reputation system in the wider game reflects in things like vendors, contracts, and exclusive bounties. It's a really desirable thing to get a good reputation or have a terrible reputation and have people chasing you down. So, a lot of really cool stuff here in this answer. We now know that the reputation system and your choices, it won't impact the main story of this game. You're not going to be able to lock yourself out of missions or change the flow of the main story, but there will be choices that you will have to make within the main story missions, but it's not going to be impacted by your reputation system in the open world. That is exclusively an open world gameplay mechanic. But what I want to focus in on beyond that is this part about exclusive bounties, Andreas, because we've known for a while now that when your reputation gets low enough with a particular syndicate, they have the ability to send bounty hunters after you. But the way this comment is reading, where he says exclusive bounties, I tend to believe that's not what he's talking about. This sounds like we might be able to have exclusive bounties through these syndicates, like gain access to them if we have a good enough reputation. This sounds like perhaps bounty hunter missions are available in this game.
I mean, that would just be incredible, and I do think it is interesting that Julian uses this phrase here, exclusive bounties, and we do know that you are going to come face-to-face in this game with Han Solo, Frozen, and Carbonite. You are going to be interacting with Jabba the Hutt, and it does make me think, Nick, will there be an opportunity here for you to meet a famous bounty hunter like a Boba Fett? If I'm creating a Hive of Scum and Villainy game on Tatooine where you can explore Jabba's palace, it seems like such a missed opportunity not to start dealing with bounty hunters in this galaxy. And my idea here is, I don't know if you'll just dream with me here, maybe you learn bounty hunting from a famous bounty hunter like Boba Fett. I think that would just be my dream scenario, but I don't know, Nick. We've just had a AAA Star Wars game that gave us a Boba Fett cameo, so what's the likelihood that we get that in a second Star Wars game, 2 in a row? I don't know. Is that too good to be true? And I guess on that direct note, we received a StarWars.com article about a year ago, July 23rd, 2023. They posed this direct question to Julian Garrity. They asked him, the setting to me is interesting, the time period between Empire and Jedi. You've got Boba Fett in play, all the bounty hunters that we meet in Empire, even some of the comics like Dr. Aphra. You've got a lot to choose from. Might any of these characters pop up in the game? And Julian Garrity says, fans are going to have to play the game to see who might show up as part of Kay's story. I think Jabba's the most obvious that we've featured. Of course, Julian's going to sidestep this question, but man, I hope he was smirking when he said that response.
Yeah, it's a lot of interesting stuff here at play, especially just with this whole thing about exclusive bounties, because, of course, I want to caveat this. He could just be talking about the fact that these syndicates can send bounty hunters after you if your reputation gets too low, but I don't know about you guys. I'm reading this completely differently. Exclusive bounties sounds like missions that we can take on with these syndicates if we get a good enough standing with them, just like we will have access to particular vendors and stuff like that in areas of the map. This just sounds like another new gameplay component, a new gameplay feature. We know that smuggling missions will be in this game, and this comment to me just reads that there will also be the opportunity to take on bounty hunter missions from these syndicates. I cannot wait to get more context behind this quote, and maybe he clarifies or something in an interview down the road, or perhaps bounty hunter missions really are in this game and we've just learned about it in a very exciting new open world gameplay side mission mechanic for this game. Like, really exciting stuff at play here, guys. So definitely let us know your thoughts down below on all of this information. There's a ton of new stuff. We now know the rough length of this game. Is that enough for you? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Were you hoping for something like Red Dead Redemption, or were you hoping for something a little shorter because you're an incredibly busy person? Definitely sound off on that. And please, let us know your thoughts on this whole quote about exclusive bounties. Do you think this means that there will be bounty hunter missions in this game? You can be a bounty hunter as K-Vest on behalf of these syndicates, or do you think he's just talking about the fact that if your reputation gets too low, they'll send bounty hunters, and it's just a weird way to say it? Definitely let us know your thoughts on all of this down below, because we love reading through what you guys have to say. It helps us think about what we're expecting for this game, so definitely sound off below. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for us for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, we will see you all next time.